Hey there, and welcome back to Just One More Chapter with Emily. Whether it's your first time with us or you've been with us from the beginning, we're glad you're here. Please make sure that you're caught up to Chapter 10, which is where we'll start today, on The Interpreter by Brooke Robinson. This is a story following Ravel Lee, an interpreter in London who is on her way to adopt a 6-year-old boy out of foster care named Elliot. So grab your coffee, settle in, and get ready for Chapter 10 of The Interpreter. I collect my mail from downstairs and ensure there's nothing remaining with my or Elliot's name on it. Then I shake our windows and check the locks are secure. I hope Lydia is right, that the faux drug dealer is actually a serial burglar and that bag in his hand nothing more than a scoop of washing powder. If that's the case, he would have seen there's little of value and moved on to robbing someone more worthwhile in Hampstead or Swiss Cottage. This flat was never meant to be our forever home. Even if I wanted it to be, I can't afford it. Once it did its job of impressing the adoption agency and Elliot is legally mine, I had always planned for us to move. Our next flat, our proper home, will be safe. As for today, Lydia will forget. She understands that it's just one of those weird things that happen when you live in London. It won't count against me, but nothing like this has ever happened to me before, and the timing during such an important visit for Lydia. Am I really that unlucky, or was it not a coincidence? In which case, who else would it be but Elliot's birth family? I find the key to my desk drawer and pour through Elliot's folder, right here on the floor. I work through the top half, a dozen documents that appear to be brief memos about when and why he was removed from his family. One mentions a police altercation, and the next notes his parents' substance abuse issues. I knew Elliot's parents were addicts and assumed there would have been police involvement at some point. There is also a doctor's report that notes numerous deficiencies. Lydia mentioned this when he first came to me. It was all addressed with his previous foster family. His iron and calcium levels are now in the normal range. I flip past and work my way through the rest of the pile. I'm reading the same thing twice, I realize. The stack of papers half an inch thick is now out of order, and I've lost track of which sides I have and haven't read. I spread everything out around me in an arc and move across one by one. They're duplicated. The phrasing is exactly the same. Most of these reports are photocopies, and now I've reached the end. Elliot was put into care because his parents were drug users, and several times neighbors called the police citing violent disturbances. I had imagined there was something more substantial in here, but apparently this is all we know. There's nothing to indicate his parents would be capable of any sort of sophisticated plan to get Elliot back. I wonder if this is a normal amount of information to have received about a child's background. He might remember more disturbing things about his parents than is in these reports. Elliot could need some kind of therapy, now or when he's a little older. I wish I had Doreen to ask. After I return Elliot's folder to my desk, I log into Facebook and find Doreen's profile. It would be so easy to type her a message. I start composing one in my head, ordering my thoughts, listing everything I want to say. I do this all the time, I've come to realize. During a pause in court or a quiet moment in the middle of a police interview, in my head I'll be drafting a letter to her. I'm not aware I'm doing it until the talking resumes and I am back to being the interpreter in the room. In the split second that I imagine sending her a letter explaining everything, I can taste something new on my tongue. Relief. On my phone, I scroll through all of the recent photos I've taken of Elliot. There, that's the one. 2 weeks ago, Elliot playing in Hyde Park. I managed to press the button at precisely the right second, capturing him mid-flight, both feet off the ground, running straight at the camera, his arms out though reaching for it, for me. That's the first photo I would send to Doreen, but I know that I can't. I put the phone down and close out of Facebook. Soon enough it sounds, and I fumble for it, bracing myself for a message from Lydia. I'm sorry, we've decided to give Elliot to someone else. It's a call from Exia. This one's not on the app. It's urgent. I didn't catch his name, this man calling from the agency's main office. Thorpe Park in Surrey. There's been an incident. Need a French terp ASAP. I'm in North London. It will take me 2 hours to get there by the time I get to Waterloo and change trains. In a car, you'll be there in an hour. I don't have a car, and it's 1:30. My son finishes school at... He interrupts me. We're sending a taxi. You haven't even said what kind of incident it is. Thanks, Ravel. I'll text you details for the cab. Wait, He's gone. I ring Elliot's school and arrange for him to attend after-school club. 2 minutes later, my taxi is here. The driver takes the A40. Chicken shops give way to sleepy golf courses and the palest of green trees. I spend the car journey exploring Thorpe Park's list of attractions on my phone, calculating how many Elliot is old enough to ride. In a couple of years, I'll take him here and he'll bring a friend. I'll still have him then, won't I? I check my phone again for Lydia. Nothing. After being approved by the adoption panel, I received a formal letter in the mail informing me the decision had been ratified. Then, not quite 4 months later, a phone call telling me I'd been matched with a child called Elliot. He was 6 years old. On the call, I'd felt like I'd won, triumphed over something I couldn't articulate. But by the time we'd hung up, the kitchen where I stood came into sharp focus, as though for the very first time. The hot plates and the knives and the mandolin slicer. Objects that are incredibly dangerous to children, but none of them as dangerous as me. Because I have no idea what I'm doing. Who on earth would give a child to me? Elliot was being fostered by a family in Greenwich, experienced parents with 3 biological children of their own, and a rescue Maltese terrier. For our first introduction, I went to their house and sat on a sofa in the front room while one of the older children led Elliot in from the garden. My stomach felt like I was on a turbulent long-haul flight, the plane hit by a high-altitude storm, scooping and dropping without warning. Your body jolts to the roof, while your soul, exposed, clings to the seat. The following day, I returned as planned. The foster father encouraged me to take Elliot out alone to the local park. I brought a handful of Freddo frogs and produced them from my handbag when we reached the swings. Elliot ate them. Of course he did. But I immediately felt like a fool, trying to bribe a boy into liking me like a dog. He didn't meet my eyes those first 2 visits. It took the 4th meeting, a trip to a nearby ice cream parlor. I was bribing him with food again. When he looked me square in the face and smiled, and I melted faster than my caramel gelato into a puddle of sticky sweetness. The big day came, and Elliot moved into the flat on Finchley Road. I spent the week cooking and freezing containers of his favorite meals: macaroni, cheese, spaghetti bolognese, chicken nuggets. The oven filling the house with smells he found comforting and familiar. His foster family gave me their bamboo cup and dinner set he'd latched onto while in their care, so there would be continuity and security in his first meal with me. Lydia presented me with a book on intense therapeutic parenting. The idea is that you can make up for lost time for the life your child lived before you, without you, by cocooning for 1 week for every missing year. For 6 weeks, apart from school, we stayed home together where we chatted, we laughed, we played, we watched cartoons and finished huge puzzles, baked cupcakes, and made up games. Because I couldn't afford to not work at all, I told Exia and the police I was unavailable for in-person jobs, instead logging into the telephone service, language line, whenever Elliot fell asleep, interpreting for any and every voice call that came through. Each time there was a break in the calls, I'd curl my neck around Elliot's half-closed bedroom door and get a dose of him. Enough arrests and crises happened in early hours to keep most of my bills paid. By day, we followed the routine Elliot had been in at Greenwich as closely as possible, leaving some space to develop our own. We kept things in the order he was used to: evening pajamas, teeth brushing, then book reading, lights out, snuggles, and goodnight kisses. We ventured to the O2 shopping center down the road, where he chose items in the houseware store to decorate his room. Fairy lights helped to create a reading nook along with a beanbag, while a giant poster of cataloged bugs and spiders animated the walls. I wanted those 6 weeks to never end, and for us to somehow carry on indefinitely in that private world. When the school holidays came, I even spent an afternoon researching homeschooling options for the new year before I came to my senses. Now the taxi stops and the driver tells me we're here. Thorpe Park is enormous, and it takes 3 bubbly teens in golf buggies, 2 radio calls to get more senior staff, and another car rider to deliver me to where I'm supposed to be. At the sight of Met police uniforms, my knees give way. I hope this isn't some horrific accident. A French tourist flung from a thrill ride, one of those cheery gapiers who directed me here, tasked with finding the body parts. We are entering the section of the park called the jungle. The area has been cleared, or else punters themselves could sense trouble and voluntarily move their groups along. Carriages in the shape of bananas swing empty. A circular coaster is idle on its track. I see the clients, half a dozen people bunched in a grassy strip, their mouths silenced by the sealed car windows around me. The park employee behind the wheel stalls the engine and indicates for me to get out. Good luck, my driver says. I count 6 police cars in total and maybe a dozen officers. One of them sidesteps the group and meets me on the approach. All we've managed to get from them in English is that a 3-year-old and a 70-something grandmother are missing, he says, and the grandmother has some sort of Alzheimer's. They're lost somewhere in the park, I ask? They couldn't have gotten much further, but you never know. There's nothing to suggest it's an abduction. We're treating it as a misadventure at this stage, but every minute counts. He looks tired. He's trying to seem bright and alert, but his efforts are only making it worse. He's probably just coming off a night shift, this emergency pulling him back from the home time brink. There are so many police here, not counting the officers in the helicopter circling overhead. A child going missing is very different to an adult murder investigation, but I can't help wondering if Sandra's case is getting quite this much attention given how quickly the news stories fell away. The family's French, I ask? They said they live in Kaiser, something or other, close to the French-Germany border. He leads me to the family. A woman stands alone, grinds a knuckle into her temple. She must be the child's mother. I'm told the rest of the group is an extension of aunts, uncles, cousins. A young boy pesters his mother to go on the Darren Brown ghost train while there's no line. An uncle rages at the on-hold music from a call to his embassy. The problem is, they're not speaking French. I pull the detectives aside. Exia told me this assignment was in French. He glares at me as though he cannot understand what I'm telling him. I'm sorry, but I don't speak any German, I say. Someone's made an error. I've been waiting for you for 90 minutes. You are not telling me they've sent the wrong interpreter. He grabs at the flesh on his chin, tips his head back and growls. I need you to get a full description of what the grandmother and child are wearing, what they were doing this morning, everything that was said between the various family members, what their plans were for the rest of the day, okay? A pause. Great, thank you. On answering his own question, his voice brightens as though he has already forgotten the inconvenient facts I just explained. I'll call the agency. They'll find you someone. I stop speaking because a scuffle has broken out between 2 family members. One man shoves another, who staggers back and lands in the dirt. He's unhurt, but his forehead ripples. Composure no longer possible. Sprays of German, arguing over who is to blame, whose turn it is to house the aging grandmother once she's found. Do you know what they're saying? The detective asks. No. We stand in silence for a moment as the officer watches the family. At some point, his eyes walk back, and he is staring at me. I thought you said you didn't speak German, he said, stepping closer, invading my concentration. My lips must have been moving. It's been so long since they've been allowed to speak German, they couldn't resist the opportunity to catch this conversation and play along. You do know what they're saying, don't you? Understanding writ all over my face. I only speak a few stray words. What did you catch from all that? He turns away from the family. They were arguing. That much I got. You should wait for a German interpreter. I told you, I've been waiting for almost 2 hours. He massages his eyebrows, hard, trying to push them off his face. One of my favorite German words is Torschlusspanik, literally translated into English as gate shut panic. The bloom of anxiety that time is running out for you to act. I want the gate to close. Faster. Now. Don't do something you will regret, I tell myself. Shouts erupt in German as the family members still stood on the grass divide into 2 teams. A nearby officer jogs over and positions himself in between. Something's going on. I need to know what they're saying, my officer says. It seems as though there was an agreement that after this vacation, the grandmother would go and live with her son in Berlin, but the son had always planned to renege on the deal. Is it relevant information to search for the missing child? The police should know, in case the grandmother was misdirected today out of spite, deliberately left on the spinning teacups rather than accidentally lost. But I can't help them. Acknowledge the desire, I think to myself, but do not give in to it. It's that same feeling some people get when they walk close to a cliff drop or the rim of a harbor, the urge to fling their phone, their valuables, or even themselves over the edge. Apparently it's fear, but it feels like temptation. The men continue to argue. My mind knows what's best for me. It scrambles the words into an unintelligible soup. You should ask them about their care arrangements for the grandmother, I say. It sounds as though some members of the family consider her a burden. What else? his fingers around my elbow, steering me away from the family. That's all I got, no more. You need to help me question them. I'm not qualified to interpret in German. Have a go. Come on. You can obviously speak more than you're letting on. My shoes dig into the ground. I'm not registered for that language. I would be reprimanded for working outside of my official languages, probably removed from the register. We're talking about people's lives here. A 3-year-old is missing. I'm not fluent enough. I'm sorry. I can't go there, even if a child is missing, especially when it's a child. I rub my eyes. Behind my lids, the grandmother is there, trying to cross the main road, but collected by a truck. I watch the child wander into the sweaty arms of a kidnapper, little him or her coaxed into a stolen car filled with dead-eyed teenage boys. Another favorite word, Kopfkino, is German for head cinema, a word describing the phenomenon when your mind turns amateur filmmaker, directs a short movie about how things might go, and forces you to watch. You're okay with a 3-year-old being in potential danger, he says, real loathing in his voice now. You're happy to stand there and not help? Then under his breath, don't have children of your own, I suppose. I do. Well, sort of. It's complicated. He shakes his head. His hand is indicating that I should shut up unless I'm going to help. Of course I'm concerned about this 3-year-old. I glance toward the woman who I'm assuming is the mother. My son's not in danger, but I might be in the process of losing him too. I know how she feels. No, I don't. What am I talking about? Elliot might be taken from me and given to another family, but the chances are they'll be better than me, with siblings, 2 parents, aunts, uncles, more money, a better house. I'm just being selfish. I'm not worried for Elliot's sake, only for my own. If you're just covering your arse, then the police officer turns to look at the 2 men talking furiously in German. I won't write this up. I won't record you as a German interpreter, but if you understand any of what they're saying, you need to let me know, he spits. Now! I would like to help you, more than he could guess, but my words come out deadpan because I'm trying so hard to hold everything back. With his eyes, the officer grabs my shoulders and shakes. You don't want my help with this, I want to tell him. Anyone but me. Then a message lights up my phone. You were assigned to Thorpe Park job by mistake. Language is German. Terp on their way. You'll be paid for 1 hour plus travel time. I see the car approaching, 3D, not a mirage, and start to wave. I move toward it as though it is me they are here to help instead of the child's family. I think that's the German interpreter, I say. Thank Christ for that. The police officer is already jogging and runs past me. I feel so much lighter, I might just lift off from the ground and float away. Thank Christ indeed. I need to rest for a moment. I squat down on the grass and breathe. They've all but closed the park, the place now swarming with police and search teams in high vis. I walk by a ride called Rush, a giant swing which goes 75 feet into the air. No one will notify me to say the grandmother and child have been found or to update me on the situation. It doesn't occur to them that the interpreter would be anxiously waiting for a happy resolution, but I'll be watching the news and hoping it's okay and that there's no ongoing search. Even if I was the German interpreter today and worked with the family for many hours, still no one would think to call and tell me the end result. If the grandmother and the child are found safe and well, I bet the police officers will gather for a pint after work, debrief after an intense day, toast to a happy ending. I'm just a translation service, not supposed to be emotionally invested, barely human, not worth a phone call to reassure or console. I climb onto the ride and hope the jolt will scare today out of me the way uppers are prescribed for mania, because like treats like. The safety bar comes down and locks into position. You are not tall enough for the rides, my mother would say. There's no point in us going, even when the shortest kids at school all went to the theme park during vacations. I take a big breath, ready to scream. Chapter 11. Now over a week since her death, Sandra is back in the news as the police fail to arrest anyone in connection with her murder. En route to Elliot's school, I read through the most recent articles on my phone and watch another clip of CCTV released by police. This new video shows a stocky man walking down Sandra's street in Knightsbridge carrying a very large bag which he drops periodically and drags as though his arms can no longer bear the weight. Police are calling on the public to help identify this person whom they would like to speak to about the crime. An eyewitness, a neighbor of the heiress, is quoted in a BBC story. She saw this man, on the Saturday of Sandra's murder, loitering in the area. The woman says that she has seen him on numerous other occasions hanging around the street, being aggressive towards passerby. He's a local homeless person. He could be the shadow on the CCTV taken from the heiress's back garden. That must be what police are suspecting and why they're looking for him. The man on the screen has little to identify him. His face is unclear, his hair a generic brown, his build average. There is nothing distinctive about the bag. If he has nowhere else to live, presumably he has no colleagues or neighbors of his own and few family or friends. It will take some luck for anybody to see this video and know his name. From school, Elliot and I collect the tablet from the repair shop. The young man passes it across the counter for me to inspect. It looks brand new. Perfect. Thank you. I reach over with my card. The machine says $45.99. I thought this was going to be 40 pounds. Screen repair for this model of iPad is 45 pounds and 99 pence. I know that's the official price, but you offered it to me at 40. His eyes on mine, blank. You don't remember? I don't set the prices. Sorry, I just work here. I release a slow sigh. That's what you said last time. He stares at me, though waiting for me to make a decision. 6 pounds here and there, it all adds up. What am I going to do? Refuse to pay? Abandon our device to this shop? Fine. After paying, I steer Elliot outside and he turns and calls, "Bye!" to the man in a very cheery voice, and today I wish my boy wasn't so friendly with strangers. When we get home, "I'm sorry I hurt the computer," Elliot says. We all get upset sometimes. I squeeze his hand. His voice is so brittle it occurs to me that he's been carrying the guilt about that tantrum. It's completely very fine. The computer wanted me to tell you that he has forgiven you, and in fact he enjoyed the little vacation to the repair shop. Elliot giggles. The brittleness is gone. It is homework time, but you better test the iPad out first, don't you think? See if it's working okay? Yes! He takes it and hugs it to his chest. 10 minutes, okay? Then homework. Of course, 10 minutes turns into 20, and it is then a rush to get through Elliot's schoolwork while trying to make dinner. A text shows on my phone. "Are you home? I'll be there in 10 minutes. Before I have the chance to reply, Lydia is at my front door. A voice inside says, "This is it. Our social worker spent the day lining up an alternative foster family for Elliot, and now she's here to take him away." I open the door, my face holding a mock smile. My body is blocking the doorway, stopping her from coming in. Play nicely, I tell myself, and don't let her see your panic. I move aside with a flourish and wave her through. "I was in the area and realized I forgot to get your signature on this," she says, coming inside. "It's just signing to say I was here last week." She is holding a loose sheet of paper. Lydia's finger points to where I am to scribble as her eyes sift the room. I don't believe her. I've never had to sign something like this for her before. This is a deliberately impromptu visit to check up on us after the drug dealer incident. There is a mess spread all over the kitchen worktop. A timer goes off on the oven as the fridge begins to beep because I have left the door open. I am disorganized and spent. "It's all happening in here, isn't it?" Lydia says. Under the saucepan, the gas ring needs igniting again, and if it doesn't light on the first go, I just might cry. She wanted to catch me off guard, and she has succeeded. "How are you, Elliot?" Lydia is traveling through the living room and at the dining table, crouches to peer over his shoulder. Elliot gives a quiet hi with his chin pressed against his chest. It is 10 minutes to 5 o'clock, and we've been doing homework for the past half hour. A resources pack came home from school, and it is apparent that Elliot is considerably behind the other children in almost every area. 6 years old, and his class is already taking regular tests. I don't want Elliot to feel like a failure. One night I changed the sound of the week question on his quiz sheet to one which I was sure he could get the answer. He's doing his homework, I tell her. Today is a dot-to-dot puzzle and a single A4 page of math questions. It takes so long for him to settle and properly concentrate, I try to supervise while cooking dinner, but each time I leave him to check on the stove, I return to find his math cast aside and colored pencil in his hand. He just wants to draw. "I like that," she says to Elliot. "It's very good. Is that your mom?" "No, it's Sandra." There is a second where I think I must have misheard. Sandra. That's what he said. Behind the kitchen worktop, the serrated knife escapes my hand and catches my bare leg on its way to the floor. Lydia can't have seen it from where she's standing. I don't react. "Who's Sandra?" Lydia asks. During this early stage of the adoption process, new people should be introduced to the child very carefully. I don't want to have to tell her that I left Elliot in the care of someone else. I can't. Not with a drug dealer strike against me. "Don't mention that day at court when she took you to the restroom," I tell Elliot silently. "Please have forgotten about that." "She drew a picture of me," Elliot says. I sprint to the dining room table to see what Lydia is looking at. Play it cool, I tell myself. Don't overreact and make her suspicious. The social worker is quiet as she observes Elliot's drawing, and I am imagining it as a composite police sketch, and Lydia will recognize Sandra Ramos from the news and know I left my son with someone who is brutally murdered. Between the killing and the drug dealer, she will think I have criminal connections and am in no way fit to raise this boy. I reach the dining table, and the picture, in purple and yellow pencil, does not resemble the real Sandra. He's 6. Of course it doesn't. It's an uninhibited series of squiggles, nothing more. Sandra is a common name. It's crazy to think Lydia would jump to that conclusion, even if she's aware of the case. My shoulders relax. I pick onion skin from my fingers. That's nice of her, Lydia says as I move back to the stove. But she's gone now, Elliot says. I kick the fridge door shut a little too hard and the appliance wobbles. Please, Elliot, I want to say, stop talking. Earlier today, he did ask me what Sandra was up to, and as planned, I said she went home to the Philippines, which is why, sadly, we won't be seeing her again. What else could I have said? The first person I introduced him to in his new life has been murdered. That's lovely, Elliot. I walk back to the table. Should we put it on the fridge? I whisk the paper away before I get an answer. Now finish your puzzle homework, yeah? Then you can watch some TV before your bath. Lydia follows me into the kitchen. Yes, good. I need to get her away from Elliot. I thought of you today, she said. I needed an interpreter for something at work. Oh, I take my time pinning the picture to the fridge to avoid her eyes. You're a hyperpolyglot, right? Generally, the accepted cutoff for being a hyperpolyglot is 11 languages. I speak 10. You're one short. Actually, I'm not. Anyway, have you ever done work with child protection? My boss says we're often struggling for interpreters in various languages. I reposition the magnets, pretend I'm taking my time to place his drawing in precisely the right spot. I only do court and police stuff, really, I say, in the flattest tone I can summon, as though it is dull and I actually have no interest in my work. You know, legal and criminal type things. I hold my breath and wait for her response. All of the previous work-related conversations I've had with Lydia, did I ever mention an assignment with children? No, there's no way I would have let that happen. When I went through the adoption application process, she spoke to an account manager at Exia and confirmed I was who I claimed to be, my average income, and qualifications. Privacy rules mean the agency wouldn't have gone into specifics of any of my previous assignments, even if it did come up in conversation. Don't make a mistake by overreacting, I tell myself again. She won't know unless I betray myself. We sometimes have to use an interpreter for child removal, family supervision, interviews, that sort of thing, she says, watching me press down on the paper corners. Where's that disengaged tone of voice? I need it again. If you're ever in a bind, I say, non-committal, give me a call. If it's one of my languages, maybe I can help. That's what Lydia would be expecting to hear, what a normal person would offer in this situation. Exia would not have told her that I now insist on no child protection or social service assignments. She would not be aware of that note in my file. As far as Lydia knows, my first and only contact with social services was last year when I applied to adopt. How would she know otherwise? The only way would be through Doreen. Even if Doreen had stayed in social work, she'd have retired before now, and it's unlikely she would have overlapped with Lydia. I don't have to worry about them knowing one another or talking. But what about Doreen and I talking again? I think back to Doreen's Facebook account, her profile image, a wide shot of her on a creamy beach. Naturally, we aren't friends, and most of her photos and posts are locked down, but the 5 photos set to public appear to have been snapped through the window of a helicopter during a joyride. The city could very well be in Australia, which is where she said she was going. Doreen is on the other side of the world. I can get back in touch with her later, once Elliot is legally, irrevocably mine, but right now I can't risk her becoming involved. Well, I got what I came for, Lydia says, waving her form. I'll let you get on with your evening. I thank her and show her to the door. During his bath, I ask Elliot why he wanted to draw a picture of Sandra. Where's the Philippines? He pronounces the country like it sounds, Philip Pines. It's in Southeast Asia, a long way from here. Can we go there? I shake my head. It's too far. What about on vacation? Sanjay at school is going to Thailand for Christmas. I don't know who Sanjay is, but his family clearly has a lot more money than I do. Plane tickets are very expensive. One day, but I'm afraid I don't have the money for that right now. While Elliot brushes his teeth, I think of the one vacation I had with my mother. She was still working in England. This was before all the moving, the country hopping. We went to Suffolk for a week. Nothing exotic, in the chilly off-season when the hotel would have been cheap. The town, Adelberg, had very poor phone reception, and there were no demands on my mother's attention for the full 7 days. The beach was covered in huge stones, some practically boulders. We scrambled along the shore each morning rather than strolled. It rained quite a lot, and the locals stayed inside. It felt for that week we were the only 2 people in the whole world. "We'll go on holiday," I tell Elliot. "You and me sometime, I promise." Once Elliot is in bed, I make myself a cup of herbal tea to unclench. I think I passed Lydia's assessment. I really hope this was the last one. I won't leave the flat so messy again in case she makes another spontaneous visit. After packing Elliot's school bag, I finish the washing up. When I lift my purse to put it away, it feels unusually heavy. I don't carry cash anymore, so I don't know what the weight could be. I open the zip and see the coin compartment, usually empty, is now stuffed with coins of every color and currency. Oh no. On tiptoes, I walk into Elliot's room, nudging the door open slowly to avoid waking him. The windowsill is bare. My haggling with the computer repair guy, the talk about expensive vacations. Elliot had noticed money is a bit of a problem for me. Of course he has. Children pick up on these things. But I shouldn't have allowed it to be visible to him. Not with his background and everything he's been through. It's my responsibility to shelter him from concerns like money. I empty my purse onto the carpet and spread out the coins. Tomorrow I'll return them when he's in school. I'll say the bank deposited the money into my account, but said he could still keep the coins as they are part of his special collection. I turn over each one and read the markings. Apart from the dragon toy, his coin collection is the only real possession he had when he came to me. I know how much it means to him. A deep ache expands in my chest. I know I don't deserve him, and Lydia likely agrees. One of the euros is shiny enough for me to see my reflection. We've been doing 2 chapters at a time, but I think tonight we'll do just one more chapter. And with that, we have The Interpreter by Brooke Robinson, Chapter 12. My new morning routine is to check the news on my phone the moment I wake, looking for updates on Sandra's case. There's nothing again today. If anyone has gone to the police this week identifying the homeless man with the bag on the CCTV, they haven't released it to the media. I go back to the BBC article where a Knightsbridge resident, a neighbor of the heiress, is quoted as having seen the man with the bag on numerous occasions. The article doesn't give the neighbor's name, so I can't look them up. Instead, I search through Twitter and Facebook to see if there are any comments which seem credible. On Facebook, I find a closed community group called Southwest 3 Southwest 1X, the postal codes of Knightsbridge and nearby Chelsea. I update my profile image, set my location as the heiress's street, and ask to join. An hour later, my request is accepted, and I see the group has been discussing Sandra's murder. One of the members has linked to the 2 CCTV clips released by the police. The first is from the heiress's security camera in her back garden, showing Sandra going out to the trash and leaving the door open before someone in shadow approaches. The second is the footage taken somewhere out the front of the house, down the heiress's street. It shows the stocky man carrying a very large bag along a footpath, periodically dropping it and readjusting his grip. "That's him," someone in the group commented. "I've seen him before. He's a homeless man known to the area. He's aggressive, always spitting, muttering to himself. I couldn't give the police a better description. To be honest, I try to avoid him and stay away. That's him in both clips of CCTV. Other group members chime in, mostly to say they agree. They've also seen the man in the area. He frightens their children. No one has had a good look at his face, not enough to be able to help police flesh out their identity sketch. No one has seen him in this past week. They wonder if he's aware of the news and knows that the police are after him. My phone beeps. I close out of Facebook. I'll come back later and see if these neighbors have written anything else about Sandra. On my phone is a message from Lydia instructing me to check my mail. She writes that there has been a change to the first court hearing for Elliot's adoption, and I've been sent some paperwork outlining what's going to happen. I don't want to cause undue worry. We need to let the system do its thing. That sounds ominous. I scramble out of bed to check my mailbox, my long pajama legs trailing on the dirty ground. The box is empty. Then, hours later, after I drop Elliot at school, I return to see a postwoman on a red bike pedaling away from the street. The mail has been delivered. I tear through the envelope and speed read a letter from the court. The mother was granted leave under S. 47-5 of the Adoption and Children Act 2002 to oppose the adoption application. I read the sentence again. Elliot's birth mother is trying to get him back. She was a drug addict, according to the papers in Elliot's folder. Could she have cleaned herself up so quickly, enough to impress the courts and convince the judge that he belongs with her? My knees give way and I collapse in the gutter. I read through the remainder of the letter. Elliot's birth mother has been granted leave to oppose the adoption on appeal, and so now, for the first hearing, his previous Greenwich foster parents and I have been called as witnesses. I will have to attend court. The concrete is damp, and I can feel moisture seeping into my trousers. I have to get up and go. I accepted a booking for this morning at the police station in East London. There's nothing I can do to change the situation, and I can't sit here rereading the letter all day. I will go to court and say whatever I have to in order to keep him. I don't want an interpreter, the Hungarian woman says when I arrive at the police station. Tell her, go, she says to the two detectives on the opposite side of the table. I'm seated next to the client, her back twisted away from me as she tries to shoulder me out of the conversation. People often take offense when a police officer suggests they need an interpreter for their interview. They become indignant, and time is wasted getting them to concede that letting me help is a good idea. We need the interpreter to make sure we get everything right, one of our detectives says. I speak English. English, the client shouts, leaning across the table. I can see that, the detective continues, but you are under caution, and we need to ensure you understand exactly what's happening. When it's clear someone isn't perfectly fluent in English, police insist on the use of an interpreter so that a defense team can't later claim language misunderstanding as a reason to dismiss evidence. Tell her, go, she says again. I sit in silence while the detectives try to convince their suspect to let me help. I think about Elliot's court letter folded in my handbag. I won't sleep tonight. I'll have that nightmare again where I go to the bathroom in the middle of the night and the architecture of the flat has inexplicably changed. In the few hours I've been asleep, not only is Elliot gone, but his whole bedroom has disappeared, the wall sealed over as though it was never there. A bitter thought enters. I was right to not send Richard a photo of Elliot because he is going to be taken from me. How am I going to explain all of this to Elliot? On some level, he understands where we are in the adoption process and what it means when it is finally confirmed. Yesterday, over breakfast, he asked me if I was adopted too. I should have expected him to ask about my parents, his grandparents, soon enough, but I didn't have anything prepared and said my mother lived far away, and I floundered under his follow-up questions. My answers surely stood out to even a 6-year-old as lies. She is not Hungarian, the woman is saying in the police interview room, still ignoring me. Then she unleashes a volley of Hungarian swear words, undisputably the language with the richest variety of curses. She switches back to English and for the first time looks at me. See? She says to the detectives. She not understand. I understand, I say in Hungarian, and then in English. I get her shoulder again. There might be a few of the most extreme Hungarian swear words I'm not familiar with, but I know most of them. When you're 15 and learning a new language, rude words are what you memorize first. Gabriella, a classmate at my Moscow International School, would draw Hungarian profanities in pink bubble letters on my science folder. I think of the day I went to the library to return a book after the bell and saw my mother. She never came to school. Not once had she picked me up. Something had to be wrong. So I followed her, and when she went inside the principal's office, I took the vacant seat in the corridor next to Gabriella, waiting for her detention to start. My mother spoke loudly, a lecturer used to shouting to discerned undergraduates. Her voice easily traveled through Mrs. Eads' closed door. I was hoping you could facilitate it. I understand you have a sister school arrangement in Marseille. This is how I learned that I would be moving to France after only one school term in Russia. I could not hear Mrs. Eads reply. There's an important international symposium next week, my mother continued. It's very prestigious. I have a paper included. It's been chosen to feature as part of the main presentation, actually, and there's an opportunity for me to be a visiting professor afterward. My mother's voice went quiet for the next couple minutes. I know she has exams, but I can't afford boarding school. Gabriella's pink pen stopped moving across my folder as she listened to my mother's increasingly shrill voice filling the corridor. What do you suggest I do with her, then? She sounded exasperated. I looked down and fiddled with the chunky black bracelet around my wrist. I'd fully embraced the Russian love of all things Gothic, embarrassed that Gabriella was hearing this and that Mrs. Eads had more concern for me than my own mother. For the next few minutes, the teacher lowered her voice and I could only decipher every third or fourth word, but it was clear that my mother was getting a telling off. The door opened abruptly. My mother glared at me, her cheeks as red as Lenin's mausoleum building I'd visited the week before. I stood and followed her out of the school grounds. Whatever Mrs. Eads had said to her worked. We stayed in Moscow until the end of the school year, by which time I was reasonably fluent in both Russian and Hungarian. That was the year I fully committed to learning as many languages as possible, spending every spare moment outside of school studying and practicing speaking. I wanted to impress my mother with my linguistic repertoire, but she didn't find it remarkable, even when my teachers gushed at the compulsory parent-teacher interviews. In these foreign countries, I liked that my mother sometimes relied upon me. She gave lectures in English and never had much time or inclination to learn the local language, so whatever country we were in, it was always me who was the stronger communicator. Occasionally, I'd watch her struggle with a government form, looking up words in a Collins two-way dictionary before she'd relent and ask me to do it. She didn't want me, but occasionally she needed me. Just like this Hungarian woman needs me now. The detective sat across from me, asks his first question, and it is obvious the client requires me to repeat it in her language. The client is a care nurse who, police believe, when she discovered one of her elderly patients had died at home alone, continued to invoice his family for the upkeep of their father until 4 weeks later they finally investigated why he wasn't answering the phone. By then, she'd apparently helped herself to his cash and valuables. Okay, the client says, nodding towards me. She can talk. The next question comes and the woman is already flustered. I translate the question into Hungarian for her twice. Without me, this interview would be terminated. If she did what she was accused of, this woman exploited the absolute trust placed in her. I know a home care nurse for the elderly is not a sought-after career, but who else has that much power? The final years of someone's life in your hands, them no match for you physically, nor often mentally, with no witnesses to see what you choose to do with the upper hand. She denies stealing from the old man. No doubt she was poorly paid. We don't value support workers and nurses nearly enough. Perhaps she thought she was entitled to a little something extra after he died, but to leave his body rotting, putrid and alone in his recliner for weeks on end, you have to wonder how much respect and care she had for him when he was alive. And I can tell she's lying. I can always tell when they're lying. Interpreters say the words and mimic the client's emotions too, and I can feel whether or not they're sincere. I listen to the Hungarian client again. There's no strength to what she's saying. Her words are weak and flavorless. Fear and guilt push through human faces easily. It takes a skilled liar to keep them back. The invoicing was a mistake, she says. It was automated. It shouldn't have happened. They should have been turned off in the system. There was confusion with my boss. I repeated into English. She claims to have not known that the elderly man was dead. He had stopped being her patient months ago. She assumed his family had hired another nurse through an alternative agency. She doesn't say any of this with conviction, and it's clear to me the detectives don't believe her either. The Hungarian word for friend and boyfriend are the same. You need the context of the sentence to tell you which the speaker means. She explains to the detective that her friend runs the private care business where she works, and she lives with her boyfriend in the house where some of the stolen goods were found. It's my turn to say it in English. All that's needed is to switch them up a couple of times. First, I repeat the facts correctly, tell the detectives that her friend runs the business and she lives with her boyfriend. Now I can flip it around. It would appear as though she is changing her story. She'd grow frustrated and angry, which would only make her situation worse. I bet she'd start saying no comment. It would be all too predictable, and she may as well confess. Could I get away with it? It would be just. The woman would deserve it for what she did to that poor man and his family. If she isn't punished, who is to say she won't do something like this again? I think through what I know of the procedure. When a suspect interview concludes, the tape is sent straight to the police clerk who listens and types up a transcription. The clerk records the interpreter's English translation. The transcription becomes the exhibit in court, and no one should have reason to listen to the tape again. Even if they did, my deliberate mistake would be easy to miss, as technically in Hungarian I didn't misinterpret so much as a single word. But I might be asked to appear in court and confirm the accuracy of my translation. That would mean committing contempt of court. If I was discovered a possible jail sentence, I would almost certainly lose Elliot. I don't switch the boyfriend and friend. I don't change any of her words. When there is confusion, I explain the cultural difference to the police officers and ensure they understand exactly what the woman is trying to tell them. From the corner of my eye, I look at the client and realize she's older than I first thought, the delicate skin around her eyes vulnerable to wrinkles. Now I can see real fear behind her bravado. In this room, I'm her home care nurse. I think she did what the police are alleging, but that's for them to work out. My job is to help her defend herself if that's what she wants to do. This woman understands exactly the imbalance between us. That's why she didn't want to use an interpreter in the first place. I will not abuse my power. I'm better than her, I tell myself, although I'm not sure I entirely believe it. I probably would have gotten away with changing her statement, but that isn't who I want to be. After the interview concludes, a bit colorful, was it? The police officer asks as he signs my timesheet. Those swear words she was saying to you in there? I'll live. I like to think all the swearing was because that woman is angry with herself, an expression of her inner guilt. In Russian, there's no single word that describes guilt as a feeling. In English and other languages, guilt is a verdict in court, a legal fact, but it's also a sensation, a human emotion. There's an Inuit tribe whose language has no specific word for forgiveness. When some religious missionaries arrived, they insisted the tribe needed a way to point to forgiveness so they could work with Inuit people to invent a word in their language. What they came up with roughly translates as not being able to think about it anymore. I think that's just brilliant, a word that tells you to turn off the tap of endless thoughts before it's too late, before the nagging drip wears you down like a river, gradually carving away at a stone. I leave the East London police station and head back home. I carry my handbag close to my body, inside Elliot's court letter. On the train, I take it out and read the words again, returning it to my bag when I suspect another passenger is following along over my shoulder. A text from Richard reminds me to send him a photo of Elliot. Immediately, I write back asking him first to send me one of my mother, the last picture he took, but before all the illness and weight loss, so I can show my son where I came from. The next part, still in chapter 12, is written in italics, our friend from the prologue. Well, this is the first time I've seen inside one of these houses, that's for sure, the woman says, entering my hall. I carry my sister's bag into the reception room and release it to the floor. It is not fit to come into contact with any of my furniture. Nice, the probation officer says, running a finger over the wallpaper. Very nice. Thank you, officer. I'll get her settled in and will ensure she reports to you the day after tomorrow, I say, my rehearsed line. You don't have to talk about me as though I'm not here, my sister says, reacquainting herself with the fruit bowl. Again, I think of cyanide. Alan Turing's painful death after taking a bite of his poison apple. Call me any time, the officer said, taking one last peek around my front room before she leaves. My sister drops a half-eaten plum to the coffee table, and I can feel her sticky fingers contaminate the back of my shirt. Are you happy I'm home, she asks. I'm going to have a meal delivered from an Italian restaurant around the corner. Tell me if you would like something and I'll add it to my order. Italian food, which should be enjoyed with wine, but now that my sister is here, alcohol is forbidden. My eyes drift upstairs toward my en-suite bathroom where my pills, even my acetaminophen, are now under lock and key. Downstairs, the wine cellar is secured, and I even had the maid remove her alcohol-based cleaning products. I just want to crash, my sister says, and spills onto an antique chair. Her sweat is staining it already. You're tired? I tried to summon concern. Then I'll show you to your room. I had the maid clean it this morning. Even though I was getting out, the wardens made me work right up until yesterday, painting the new wing of the prison. Up and down, up and down. She demonstrates flicking a paintbrush in vertical strokes. I can hardly lift my arm now. Come on. I head up the stairs and indicate for her to follow. Get your bag. I'll come back later and bring you some provisions on a tray. She trudges behind me, not bothering to remove her shoes or even wipe them on the mat. I swallow a ball of hot loathing. As we take the last of the stairs, I silently count to 10. I'll give her 10 more seconds to mention him, to make reference to his existence. 9, 9.5, 10. She says nothing. She can't say I never gave her a chance. I lead her down the hall, slowing my pace as we approach his bedroom. The door is wide open. One tilt of her head to the left and she will see inside. Observe that it is untouched. Still, she says nothing. Inside her bedroom, I pause and wait for her thoughts to gather. Now she will say something. She must. Actually, I am a bit hungry. Hey, she laughs. I turn away from her as my face splinters. I prepare a tray with 3 kinds of fruit juice, coffee, crackers, 2 types of cheese, and her favorite chips. I rested on the kitchen worktop for a moment while I go into the ground floor bathroom. She is my sister and I love her, I say, eyeing myself in the mirror. I prick my finger against the tip of the nail scissors until a red dot forms on the skin. I say it again. And that's the end of Chapter 12 of The Interpreter by Brooke Robinson. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Thanks so much for coming on this journey with me. I'll see you guys soon.